Is it recording?
This is Thumbs Hannah. I got home and started to try to reproduce or make another copy of this video, and in the process I erased my opening remarks, and I'll try to repeat some of those just to give a little introduction here. I said it's finally here and we're all together, and I think we're here for two reasons: friends and memories. Today we sat around and we rehashed and repeated a lot of those memories and had a lot of laughs and experienced a lot of old times. We'll rehash some of those again tonight and retell some of those lies that we told earlier today and experience some of the laughs that we had today. The friendship thing is probably the most important of all to me. We made a lot of friends in the service, and it was one of the big benefits of the service. Those friendships have endured for 40 plus years now, and I have remembered every one of you during that time and have considered you a friend, and that if I needed you I could probably call on you and you would be there to help me. I tell my kids that they need friends. I encourage them to have lots of friends. I also encourage them to have a best friend at any time. I tell them it's important to have friends because you never know when you may need a friend. And probably more important than that, there may be a time when your friend needs a friend and you can help that friend in time of need. There's no doubt that during the 3 years that I was in the OCS group, my best friend for the greater portion of that time was Bob Argo. Bob was truly a friend. He's kept in contact with me for all these years and me with him. We've exchanged Christmas cards. I've had the opportunity to see him back in 1991 in his home. And over the years he has come to my house on a few occasions. I believe in every place we lived, except we just barely missed each other in Bakersfield, California. His modus operandi was that he didn't write and tell you he was coming in advance. He just showed up on your doorstep. We will make more reference to Bob a little bit later here, and I think that basically summarizes what I said in our opening remarks, and now we will proceed. Bob, if you get a hold of this, we love you and wish you were here, and if we ever have another one, we want you to be here. Bob had gone through a little hardship. One of his sisters had passed away. He's the executor of the estate, and felt that there was some problems there that were bearing on him, so he's not with us tonight, and I wish he was. I was going to do this for Argo, so I'll do it in his absence. A lot of stories I could tell about Bob, and he's first on our list here tonight. But there's always a time of the year when Bob got homesick, and he'd always say, "Man, when they play that song," says, "I just got to go to Alabama. Just got to go to Alabama. I won't play that song for you. See if you recognize it." Hope there's words. Come on. Well, what's going on here, Barbara? Oh, I see what's wrong. You turned it off. This is the song.
From Alabama.
I don't guess we have to play all of it to get the idea, do we? But Argo got homesick, and they played White Christmas. Argo loved his family, and he wanted to be with them at Christmas time. A lot of stories I could tell about Bob and the things we did, but the main thing is that we were really true friends for a long time, and that friendship has endured for all these years. He came to buy me to see me a few times over the years. His specialty was that he wouldn't tell you he was going to come, he'd just ring the doorbell. And I always figured that if I needed Argo, he'd be there if I called him, and I still believe that. So we miss him tonight, and I know a lot of you do too. I don't know what to do here, except I guess we do like we do in all the old high school reunions. We kind of get up and tell what we've done and who our kids are and how many mistakes we made and how much money we made and lost and how much we didn't and all that good stuff. Last time I did this was at a high school reunion, and I waited until last and almost forgot I was supposed to say anything about myself, so I'm going to go first tonight. We left here, and Barbara and I got married in November of 1954, and we finished out our enlistment, and I was discharged on Easter Sunday in 1955. We hung around here 2 or 3 months and went back to Southwest Missouri, and I went back to Southwest Missouri State College and graduated. We came back to Houston, got a job with an outfit called Tennessee Gas Transmission Company, which evolved into Tenneco Incorporated, and I started in the oil and gas department in kind of a records keeping thing. Through some influences of friends, I got the urge to go to law school. I thought about it a little bit before I got out of service, and we got to Houston. Barbara was going to go to work, and we were going to make a little money. And we had hardly spent the first night in our apartment. She was pregnant, and so she never worked a day out after that. Kind of backtracking a little bit on that, when we got to Missouri to go to school, she was going to work while we went to school, and she'd always been bothered with kind of she thought a chronic lung condition. She went to the doctor, and they diagnosed her with bronchiectasis, and within the time we lived in Springfield, which was about less than 2 years, she had surgery on 2 lungs. So she's lived with that and prolonged her life. She's had a pretty good life, healthy life after that. Our first daughter then was born in November of '57. We had another son that followed about 17 months later. In 1964, we had the second son, the third child. And then almost 13 years later from that, we had the last one. He's 20 years old. Been a great blessing, quite a surprise for me, because I was 47 years old when I found out this young man was making an entrance into our world. In the meantime, we stayed in Houston a couple of years, transferred to Denver. I continued on with law school, stayed with the same company, went into their legal department after I graduated from law school. We stayed in Denver a few years. We transferred to Bakersfield, California for 3 years. Then to Oklahoma City in 1974, and we spent the rest of my career in Oklahoma City, all in the legal department with this same oil company that I have been with all these years. Names have changed and all of that. I was what you call an exploration production type lawyer, did a lot of contract work, that kind of thing. Didn't think I was ever a very good lawyer, but I did think that I did think I knew how to keep people out of business and the business aspect of the oil industry and how to do that. And so, times being what they are, that oil company was sold in the latter days of 1988. I stayed on until last day of March of '89, and I retired. We stayed in Oklahoma City a year and decided we didn't want to live there the rest of our life. Ended up coming down and buying a house in Sugar Land, Texas, which is a suburb southwest of Houston. We've lived there since that time. Been a good life for us. We have been blessed. We're not rich, but I had a whole lot more than I thought I'd ever have. That's what I imagine most of you do too. So we are thankful for that. If you want to ask me any questions, I'll try to answer them. If you don't, we'll go on. Jim Cahall is the next on our list there. Jim, I guess, was in the squadron when I came to OCS in about March of 1953. One of the first acquaintances I had, he and Walt Hudson, his closest friend at that time, I think they introduced me to Mexican food at Cairns, which is still kind of one of my favorite places to eat Mexican food. Probably some of that's nostalgia, but we ate there last night. I had a car. Cahall didn't. Cahall had a sweetheart. Her name was Frances. She worked in our office. One night he said, why don't we go down to Frances and watch Milton Berle, Tuesday night, January 13, 1953. Said she has a friend. I wouldn't care to be interested, but well, I'll go. And that evening, what then later became my wife, walked out of the bathroom, I guess, or bedroom, and hair curlers and maybe a wardrobe or some kind of bathrobe or something. I wasn't too impressed, to be honest with you folks. But that blossomed. So, and he married Frances. So some 85 years of collective marriage, I guess, out of that, and 7 children. We're here tonight. And so Jim's been a long-time friend. A couple of things that I remember about Jim. One is that he and Walt Hudson, Walt had a car, Cahall still didn't have a car, went to Port Arthur one weekend or long weekend, and they didn't show up on Monday morning, and we got a report that they were in the hands of the civil authorities. And out of that, we found out when they finally did show up that somebody in Port Arthur, as I recall, had played some kind of prank or tried to play a prank and threw a so-called bomb device out of the car into the theater, I believe it was, and the car matched Hudson's description of Hudson's car. So they were picked up as suspicious-looking characters and spent a night or two in the loose cow. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Jim and let him say what he wants to. Jim?
Wow. That's a hard act to follow, isn't it?
Yeah, that was interesting. And we had just got the squadron commander, and he said, what happened to y'all? And I told him. And they had us AWOL. You know, me and Hudson AWOL, for one day. And he said, take care of it. So I went down and as read, AWOL, should read, delete. So, when I wrote the thing, it worked out pretty good. Yeah, Frances and I have been married a long time, and we have 3 beautiful children, real proud of them. Grandchildren, and they call me Pops. And, I like that a lot. Just got to break the teeth if you said anything else. So much about me. Let me tell you a couple of stories. What was the airman in our division that hit Colonel Young right square in the mouth? Any of y'all remember? I'll tell you the story. We went to eat, and we had to go to the other place to go to the bathroom. And that bathroom door was the heaviest thing in the world to shove open. Remember? It was real, real hard. So I turned around and was saying something to somebody, and we used to be macho. So I hit the door with my thing and knock it open. About that time, he opened it. And boy, his knees buckled, boy, I got it right. And, he looked at me funny, he didn't know what the hell happened. And I started laughing. I couldn't help it. And that was one of the funniest things I ran across. But he didn't say anything. And I got promoted for about the next week or so, so I guess it was all right. Let Let me see if I can find some more little things I'm gonna tell about. I had about 20 of these I already told about. All right, it is kind of risky, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. We had an officer, direct appointed came in, you know, and these direct appointed a lot of times were appointed by the governor of the state. And just that gentleman used the term legal, and we use old terms that he was a flaming faggot. And the colonel said, get rid of him. And was it Mac? I think maybe Mac Alexander and Rhodes took him up to the BOQ, spend the night, and they arranged that he ship out from Kelly the next day. And the next morning they went over to pick him up, and all of the BOQ officers, we threw him out last night. We threw him over in the walk barracks. He said, they turned around and looked over the walk barracks, and here he came walking out. True story. Isn't that horrible? Okay. You remember Major Hart? He did about 3 false starts on there. One, he gave Dargo for his inspection, and he tried to get us guys marching that hadn't marched in 3 years. And we all had T-shirts that showed us that we didn't wear a thing. And he suggested we get safety pins and pin that down so you couldn't see. Y'all remember that? And it's either buy a V-neck T-shirt or pin those things down. And that lasted about a week. When the major shipped out, I'm not sure where he shipped out, I was in a pay record with a 2-week agreement. And I don't know who did that. He went to Bandera a lot. And he did Bill Zager. Right? Yeah, I didn't want to say names. I didn't. Yeah, he went to Bandera a lot. And he came back. And the captain, the major, they called him in. And stood him attention. He said, I got a report here saying that y'all been harassing ladies. And he spoke up and said, just 1 minute. We had to determine if women were ladies. Is that a factual story?
I don't remember.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nothing. There's so many of you also. Good talking with you.
Francis, you want to tell us anything about Jim?
Wow, he's amazing.
Come up here so we get you on video.
Oh, no.
You don't want to tell
He's
anything?
funny. He keeps everybody laughing. Everybody.
I'm going to tell you the true story of what Jim is telling there.
Did he change it right?
Well, I don't know. This is the way I
Over
remember
the
it.
years, you tell it a couple of times, you change each time, you know.
This is the way I remember it.
Exactly right.
Billy and one of his friends were put in the hands of the civil authorities at Bandera, and supposedly for whistling at the girls or something up there. They called him into Captain Denham's office. I think it was Captain Denham. Major Denham, maybe at that time. And said, well, what happened? And Billy said, well, there were these ladies. And Captain Denham says, how do you know they were ladies? Billy said, all women are presumed to be ladies until proven otherwise, and these didn't.
You know, but everybody got a different version of the same.
Now, which is close to right, Billy?
We want to hear from you now.
I got to tell a few jokes along the way. Well, I told you about this 20-year-old son we have, and Barbara likes this 2 little stories I tell. He likes to play the guitar and sing. I don't know whether he'll ever make a dime out of it or not, but anyway, that's what he likes to do. And I tell people that he's a songwriter, and he does. He must have copyrighted 30 songs or so. But anyway, the songs that I tell that he's written is country songs that couldn't do too good in the Beatle type music, so he turned over to country music. And one of the songs that he wrote is entitled If I'd have shot her when I met her, I'd be out of prison now. And I guess my favorite title is, I can't get over you till you're out from under him. Anyway, so much for that.
He'll go play it for me. That will never catch on.
Dexter Fielder. I don't know when I met Dexter, but it's early on in the Air Force. True friend, lots of laughs out of Dexter, and his best friend, Zerner, who couldn't be here tonight, and I'm really disappointed Zerner couldn't be here. I don't know whether you remember Zerner. I got to get around to Fielder to this, but Zerner played in the Vern Suter Trios, played this stand-up bass. And he had more money than the rest of us. They made pretty good money playing around the clubs at night. And Zerner had 2 Oldsmobiles during that time, 88 to 98, I believe. But anyway, it was dry, desert dry there in San Antonio. And we got up one morning and I looked out in the parking lot, and there on top of Zerner's car was about a 12-foot rowboat type thing. It was wrapped up on top of his car. I called Fielder away. I said, Fielder, look at that. He got the boat on. Fielder said, yeah. Says, I always knew Zerner would buy a boat 500 miles from water. Kept in touch with Fielder over the years. I don't know whether we ever missed sending a Christmas card to each other, and I can say that about Argo and Kay Hall. But Fielder came by to see me one time when I was in Denver, called me into the office, and I came home and visited he and his family. Children were young then. He's been a source of a lot of laughs, and I've talked to him, even told him I was coming by to see him a couple of times and canceled out. But he's been a real true friend, and kind of like Argo, I always figured if I needed old Dex, I could get him. And he's here tonight, and we're glad he's here, and come up and tell us his life story.
Boy, it's short. It's short.
Oh, there's another part of that too. I don't know why he did it, but when he and Arlene got married, they asked Barbara and I to stand up at their wedding and be their best man and lady, or whatever you want to call it. And we've got a few sorry snapshots back there of that episode. And so, Fielder, come up here and tell us, buddy.
I guess I could say a few words about Ted. I guess me and Arlene's kind of lived a sheltered life. We got out of the military, like Billy there. We just went home, started to school, didn't have a dime, and we wandered around there and had 3 kids. I spent 38 years in school business.
What's this walking around having 3 kids?
You can take that any way you want. We had 3 boys, and we were fortunate enough to get them all 3 through college, and they've all got out, and we're not having, well, I won't say that either. Try to say we're not having to support them anymore, but if you've got grandkids, if you've got kids, I think you always have to support them a little bit. I don't care how much money they make, there's always a time when you have to chip in a little bit, and we just done that here a couple of months ago. You all ain't gonna see him anymore, because I can tell you, the boy that was here today, we was up there, and I told her before we went up there, I said, they're messing around up there with those kids, and they're doing this and that, and I said, when we get up there, I said, they had a real old van, and I said, I think we was buying a new van. So we went up there and we bought a new van. So he still don't get out of that, you know. But we had a good life, had our health, like Cahill there, and I have my zipper put in here, so if anything goes wrong, I just zip it down and fix it, zip that back up. But I got over that real well. I didn't have any problems after I had it, but I've done real well. Been retired 10 years, and I like to hunt and fish a lot. But the little things that I knew about, see, like with Zager there, the smoking thing, and he'd come down there to the room, and my roommate was Duke. He'd come in there, and he'd come so often, he'd just come down and he'd water walk over there, you know, and he'd stand around a minute, he'd pick up a good cigarette thing, he'd get it on his hand, he'd get him out once, and thank you, Jack. He'd go. I asked him yesterday if he quit smoking, and I forgot what his answer was, but he said he really never did smoke. I think he just never did buy any, so he didn't really smoke. And I always think about Jack.
Just bumming around.
Jack, when we had the inspection, we was gonna have one time, you know, and they didn't have it. He didn't show up out front when we were supposed to wait out there. I didn't go in and check on him because he's as old as I was. He already knows what to do. But when I went in, I got a little bit worried about him, and I started checking around, and he'd gotten up in the wall locker. He was sitting in there in fetal position like that, sound asleep, just sleeping away. So it's a good thing I imagine we didn't have an inspection that night, because Duke might have been, he might have been answering some of Zager's and Cahill's questions over there if he'd done that. So, but really and truly, as Jim just said, the friendships there are lasting. They're good. And I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dennis. Tell you another thing I remember about Dexter. Dexter had that jet black, wavy hair. You remember that? Still has a lot of it. He was pretty proud of that hair. He'd stand in there in that latrine in the morning. He'd fix that hair. He'd wave it. And it got just right. And then he'd head for the bookstore for duty, just hoping and praying that he didn't see an officer because he didn't put his hat
Boy,
on.
it broke my heart to put that cap on.
And I've seen him almost break arms when he'd see an officer coming down the sidewalk because he had to get that hat on and get that salute and everything. But sometimes he made it all the way and didn't have to interfere with that beauty wave he had there. Arlene, you want to tell us anything about it? Huh? You sure? Huh?
Still from Sarah.
Oh, he wears a cap now.
I wear it.
Well, that's how he's preserved that hair.
I don't know if we should water grill on.
No, that's bad.
I'm just going down this list that I had and all the addresses and everything I gave up, and some of our people are not here. Dorsey Rhodes is next on that list, and I think you remember Dorsey. I'll tell you what I remember about Dorsey is that pretty wife, Sarah, that he had. I thought she was one of the pretty women I ever saw in my life. And Dorsey, they were great people. And we've also kept up Christmas cards with them over the years. And early on, when I first told him we were going to try to have this get together, he wrote me back a note and said, we just can't make it. That Sarah's mother, in their 90s, lived with them, and they're her principal caretaker, and so they just couldn't make it. But I sent him every note and every letter that we wrote and everything about this little thing. And so we appreciate Dorsey and Sarah and wish they were here, and maybe they can make it if we ever have this again. Next on that list is Brian Zerner, and we've talked about Zerner a little bit. Zerner, if you all remember, I'll never forget this. He was from Jeffersonville, Indiana. And if I've heard him say it once, I heard him say it 100 times.
Just across the river from Louisville.
Just across the river from Louisville. So here last year, we have a son that lives in Indianapolis, and he wanted us to come up to the 500 raising. So we went up, and I made a, not special effort, wasn't special effort, but we went to Nashville, and we drove up through Louisville, and I said, we're going to stop and have lunch in Jeffersonville, and I'm going to call Zerner. I'd forgotten his name. So I looked up and found the Zerner, and I called, and this spry, active lady answered the phone, and I told her who it was and what I wanted, and I thought I was talking to his wife. She said, I'm not his wife. She says, I'm his mother. 90-some years old, was the first time tonight. Anyway, she gave me, said he's over in Terre Haute, Indiana. Got a, I don't know what you call it, it's a kind of a lawn and garden tractor, boats, and I don't know. So we went back through Terre Haute, going back down to Missouri on our way home, and we stopped and called him, and I got a hold of his wife, and she says, he's home. So I called him, and I didn't call him. Yeah, I did. Come on out. Or maybe I didn't. No, she said, go on out there, Lee. I don't think we called him. Anyway, I rang the doorbell, and he came to the door. And guess what was standing in the hall right there in the front hall, the front hallway?
Big bull bit.
That big face, frank face. Anyway, we had a great visit. There wasn't anything to do that would go go by and see his business, and just the cleanest place I've ever seen in my life. I don't think Zerner had much to do with it. I think his wife and son were doing all the work, but he was just really, and he was really thrilled about, oh, you know, you have a reunion, I'll tell them when it is, where it is, and I'll be there. And after one of the letters I wrote earlier in the year, he called me, you know, and said, I'm making reservations tomorrow, and I just can't wait to get down there and breathe that San Antonio air and walk on that river, and Phyllis and I are going to go around and see some of the sights and see this country and everything. I don't know, did you read his note? His note's over there, why he couldn't be here. But we miss him and wish he was here. And I'll tell a little story about Zerner. Some of you heard me tell it earlier. Zerner was a very dry, wet, laid-back type guy, still is, I guess. And we were in the old office building there, and all the recruits or basic trainees came over and did all the dirty detail. And Zerner's desk was right there by the door. And suddenly, he was sitting there, and suddenly one day the door popped open, and this slick sleeve, no stripe, 3-day-old basic trainee popped in and stood straight at attention in front of Zerner and says, "Sir, Airman so-and-so reporting to duty, sir." And I remember Zerner never cracked a smile, and he didn't have any emotion. He just said, "That evening's Airman." I guess he had been through that too. Everybody remembers Richard. Richard Knoll, New Brunswick, Texas. Family owned the Gulf Station right there on the Guadalupe River. Everybody has a Rick Owens story. I don't know whether I have many or not, but probably some of you do. Rick, come over and talk to us. I've called Rick a few times over the years. Barbara has family here. We've been down here a lot. I've called him over the years, talked to him a few times. He has a daughter that lives in the suburb that's right next to us. Here he is, the one and only.
All right. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I can tell you a lot of stories that happened to us while we were in the Air Force. I used to go to a lot of Western dances. Zager used to go to Western dances. And we go to Bandera, we go to the Mugwump in San Antonio. Went to all these different places. And I'll tell you one little story that happened to me. We went to this place called the Mugwump. And I can't remember exactly who was with me, but somebody was with me. And we were dancing with all the girls in the place. And there was one girl, very nice looking girl. And I was dancing with her, and I asked if she had a way home, and she said, "Yeah, I've got my car outside." So, when the dance was over with, I walked her outside, and there was her car, and it had a flat tire. So I said, "Well, I'll change your tire for you with your spare on." So I started putting the spare on, and all of a sudden, this guy tapped me on the shoulder. And I get up and look, and there's this guy, a little short guy. He was older than I was. At that time, I must have been about 22. And he looked to be about 40. And standing alongside of him was this great big guy. And he said, "You don't have to change that tire." He said, "We'll take care of it." And so I didn't go along with that. And I said, "No," I said, "I told her I'd change it." He said, "No, I told you you're not going to change it." Well, we get into a discussion there. And all of a sudden, the big guy grabbed me. And he pulls my arms back like that. And he takes his leg and he locks my leg back. He tells the older guy to go ahead and start hitting me. So the other guy starts to rear back. And just about that time, Ken McAlexander walks up. And he said, "I don't think you ought to hit him." And the guy said, he started talking, he said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, he hasn't done anything." a big conversation, and man, I'm standing like this. Wow. Forget that. But, my wife and I have 5 children. We have, say, his, hers, and ours. I was married and divorced. My wife was married and divorced. She had a son and a daughter. I had a son and a daughter, and we had 1 daughter. So we had a total of 5 children. Our daughter became a singer, and she sang several Western bands out of New Braunfels and all over Texas. And that leads me to another little story. We went to Nashville, Tennessee to see if we could get, our daughter's name is Tracy. And we're going to try to get her into the big time. And I knew a guy from the Mugwump. His name was Billy Deaton. He used to play there, and he was in the Air Force at the time. So we go see Billy Deaton. Well, he doesn't know me from Adam's off Fox, but I remembered him. And I knew he knew me because I used to sing out there when he used to sing out there. Everybody always wanted to get up there and sing. I used to do an imitation of Tex Ritter, and I sang Jack Diamond, Trot, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, Billy Deaton didn't recognize me, or he hardly knew me. And then he told us that what he was going to do was if we put up so much money that he would start working on getting her a fan club. And we put up like $1,000, and then after that we put up another 1,000, and he'd get her on record, and man, he's running all this stuff. So we said, forget it. We came back to New Braunfels, and about a week went by. Old buddy, good old Air Force days and all that kind of stuff. He didn't know me up there, but now all of a sudden he wants to get very close and get my daughter signed to a contract, and that's not the way you do it. In other words, I told him, I said, if her voice won't carry her through, then you're not going to carry her. But he was like a con artist, so that went by the wayside. But in the meantime, my wife, Peggy, and I have 1 granddaughter and 4 grandsons. My youngest daughter just had her second little boy, and they live in Houston. And she's married to an engineer with the Intex company. My other daughter lives in Houston. She lives in Missouri City. She works for a large company. She's a controller for a large company. And our other daughter is in Oklahoma City. And our other son is in San Antonio. And they're all doing very well. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate it. Never forget Ricky Owen. Next guy here is Philip. I don't know whether I still know how to say it. We call him Cook. Fredericksburg, Texas. Cleanest town I ever saw. I went home with Phil a couple of times. Spent the weekend with him. I was always impressed. German family, salt of the earth. Spoke German in the home. Drank a lot of beer. After all this, I guess when I came over and first had this, Barbara's idea to have a get-together, I kept writing a Christmas card and said, I'd like to see those guys. And so I guess after we'd had my 50th high school reunion, she said, that Christmas in '96, she says, why don't you have a reunion? So I jotted a note to a couple of people, and said, why don't we have a reunion? But I got back some, basically positive response from Arville and Fielder, and I don't know, 2 or 3 others. Anyway, when we came to Lake County Scout out a place to have this, I called McAlexander and he got me in touch with Phil. And Phil has worked trying to get other people, call some people, and was very enthusiastic. And I'm glad he's here and that his wife's with him. And I want to tell a little story, and I'm kind of embarrassed of this even today. But we played softball, had a softball team. And I believe Lieutenant Graber, was that his name? Was kind of the manager. Fielder was on that team. But anyway, Potts was kind of our first string pitcher. And Phil pitched. And Graber was gone one time, and I guess since I was kind of a baseball, softball nut, he told me I was manager. And I played third base, and Potts played some infield when he went pitching. So Potts, I don't know, we were playing there at Lack somewhere. I don't know who we were playing, one of the squadrons. Anyway, Potts kind of lost it. He wasn't walking them, they were hitting him. And it got kind of embarrassing, you know. And I finally said, well, Potts has got to go here, you know. So I went over and said, Potts, you take my place at third base, I'm going to put Phil in. I think the bases were loaded to this time. And I was pretty disgusted with the whole situation. I wasn't too successful a manager, and so we brought Phil in. He threw one pitch, and somebody hit it plumb out of whack. And I said, went over and said, Phil, we're putting, you're out, and Potts is back in. And Phil reminded me of that a time or two in the day room after that. He didn't think that was too well planned. It wasn't good managerial strategy, but anyway, I'm glad. I hope you forgive me for that, Phil. Taking me out after one pitch, but I can still see that ball going out over there. And all those base runners coming around.
He was a real manager. We go out to play, and I say, where am I at? And I'd say, first or shortstop. He'd say, let me see if Captain so-and-so's here. If he's here, you're playing shortstop. If he's not, you can play first base. I always knew if that guy was there, I'd play shortstop. But if he wasn't there, I'd get to play first base.
You were good either place.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, I gotta get even with him. I'm glad you told him you were a lawyer. I'm gonna steal a little speech I had a guy that made at Rockport Air Force Base when I was on recruiting duty. He was a lawyer talking about another lawyer, and it might have been Jim, I don't know. He said the first job he got was drawing up a will for this 80-year-old woman. And he said, she said, I'm from Fort Worth, Texas. I've got $8,000, and I want to spend $1,000 on a will. And then I want the most elaborate funeral that's ever been given. I'm sorry, I said $1,000 for a will, but she said, I want the most elaborate funeral that's ever been given. I've got $8,000, and I want to give $1,000 to the first man to spend the night with. So the lawyer was newly married. He went home, told his wife about this will, and we kept looking at each other. He said, well, what do you think? She said, well, she's an old woman. Probably nothing will happen. So they decide, well, I'll tell her how to spend the night with her for $1,000, you know. So he went over, she dropped him off at the house on Saturday night. He said, I'll pick you up tomorrow morning. So the next morning she drove up, honked the horn, nothing happened. She honked the horn again and kept on honking. Finally, she just sat on the horn. This widow woman old maid opened the window and she says, honey, you go back home, come back and get me Saturday night. I decided that the city of Fort Worth buried. Anyhow, Dick Owen and I were roommates too. I'll tell my stories first. Dick used to play bingo all the time. And he'd come back, he never would win. And he says, it's nothing but old women win and retired masters. So a couple of weeks went by and I went with him. First night I won the door prize. Well, he didn't say anything, so next week we won again, and I won again. He come back and he was mumbling, "You're just like them old women who retired sergeants." But anyhow, I was born and raised in Fredericksburg. Every Friday I'd take off and chase the girls up there till I finally found one that stopped. And we got married in '54, August. Been married ever since. Had 3 children, 4 grandchildren. Retired on the Air Force, retired in 1973. Went to work for my brothers as a salesman for a wholesale distributor company until they sold out. After that, I was too young to retire, so I got me a little landscaping business and stayed at that till I turned 62, and I hung the lawnmowers up. We led a charmed life. We've been very lucky. And I want to thank him and whoever else was responsible for inviting us. I really didn't think he'd call me, but he didn't tell about that other softball games. When I was umpiring, we were playing a practice game. Jim was playing third, ball was headed down, third, bases were loaded, I think. He stepped on third, fired to Paul Sutters on first, Fred Meyer, on second. Fred was playing first, they fired that ball, he was out just as sure as was. I just went, safe. And when Jim come over, "Phil, that was a triple play." I said, "No, he was safe." But he was out.
Well, if the umpire said he's out, is that right?
That's right. Thank you very much.
How many of you guys brought your, what is it, Viagra pills with you? How many don't need them?
How many can afford it?
Huh?
How many can afford it?
Oh, you can, for that you can afford them. I mean, you can find a way with that. I heard a new way. You know, there's lots of ways to find out if you're kind of over the hill. And I picked up one the other day that I think is probably the true test. And that is, if you find out that sex is work, and you go down and apply for unemployment. You're over the hill. Kenneth Wayne McAlexander. Ken was, I don't know how to say this. I guess I would say it this way. Ken was kind of a father complex, I guess, for his name. Maybe that's because he worked at payroll and was payroll, and anyway, you got your allotment there and everything. You got married and changed the status and he was a hard worker and did a lot of work. And, my wife, he carpooled everybody and charged him $1 a week or whatever it was. And my wife rode to work with him a few times for a period of time. And I've always remembered Mike. And I know Argo and I, we had a part-time service station attendant job. And I think when we left Argo, or not Argo, McAlexander took over that. So I've remembered him a long time and used to come to San Antonio and visit Barbara's parents. And I called him a few times and went by to see him. And when I called here, I guess in February, when Barbara was down here scouting things out, I found him in the phone book and called him, and yeah, he's been very helpful. He's run the Air Force locator thing, trying to find people, and done a lot of work. Been very supportive of this little get-together, and we're thankful for that, and we appreciate that, Mike. And I sent him an email a time or two, and one time, boy, we sure needed this. I told him, I said, bring an ice chest. And by the way, while we're talking about ice chest, I bought 4 dozen cans of beer. I thought it'd be a lunch beer. There hadn't been one beer drunk over there. I drank a near beer one time, and Ricky drank one. So we've got cold beer and we got warm beer. And since you people may be paying for it, plus I've got some soda out, and I didn't know this place was going to provide the soft drinks for us, so we've got half a carload of beer and pop and whatever, so everybody help yourself when you get ready to leave here. Anyway, Mike said, yeah, man, he'd bring us ice chest, and he'd bring his camera, and he tried to find people and done a lot of work on this, and we really appreciate that, Mike. And come up here and give us a short life history.
A short life history.
Or whatever.
First of all, I got a question. How did I get an OCS? No, I thought I was going to go back when we opened up before the training group at Shepherd. And they closed it down, and I was going to go to the Memphis Air Station. And then we had some characters from OCS came up checking personnel records of individuals that were up there. And guess what? They said, you're going to Lackland to work in OCS. And I get to OCS and they didn't have a job for me. Because I was a 731, not a 732 at the time. But like I said, I didn't have a job. Well, I filled in with Huddleston from Vallejo, California, a minister, I think he was, or trying to be a minister, and he was doing military paint. So I filled in with him, started working with him. Everything was going great. I liked it. One day at noon, before noon, he said, hey, I've got a personnel action memorandum here with type ups that we're going to change your FSC from 731 to 732. I said, that's simple. He said, I think so. Says, we got it signed, so it went in through Lieutenant R.E. Williford. And Williford says, well, how long has he been working in this? Dillson said, oh, a long time. And I'm thinking, oh, that, but I thought he was a ministry, he wasn't going to lie like that. But anyway, that's where I ended up, and I enjoyed it from 51 to 57. And I've been over there a while. Of course, there was this young lady I met back in Memphis, Tennessee, and we decided we'd get married. At 52, we did, and she's kept me on the road ever since then. I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for her, but anyway, she's kept me going. And all of you guys, I remember a lot of things, nothing specifically, except of all the places that I've ever been assigned, I don't think there was any place where everybody seemed to get along so well. It was, kind of, if you want to call it that, like a family affair. But everybody got along. Once in a while, it was like always somebody didn't like it because Joe did this or John did that, but that didn't make any difference. Give them 30 minutes and it's all back going again. And I think this is great to get together, and I know we've sat at the table and reminisced back there on several different things. It says, well, at least I don't think any of us got Alzheimer's disease because we still remember all this stuff. And I enjoyed it. And glad I could get Doc down here with me this afternoon. Meet everyone. Who knows? 50 years from now, maybe we'll have another one of these. Anyway, thanks a lot to all of you. Good to see you down here.
Thank you, Mike, we appreciate it. Dorothy, you want to say anything about this good man?
He's a workaholic.
Is he? Well,
Still
yes,
is.
he was.
Back then,
He
he
was
still is
a
now.
good worker, he really was. Donald Potts, I thought that Potts would be here. Somebody told me today that maybe he has a rather serious health problem and couldn't make it, so I think you called him, did you, Phil?
Yeah, he told me he had leukemia.
Yeah. I guess I told my Donald Potts story when I said that he pitched, and I took him out and replaced him with Phil, and replaced Phil with Potts a lot quicker. But I wish Don could have been here. I remember him playing on the softball team, and I remember him now. In our barracks was a guy named Walter Sampley, and early on after I met Dito, and we'll talk about Dito a little later, but he had a friend that came in, and that friend was Buck Everett Buchanan. They were both from Metropolis, Illinois. And Buck came into our group, I don't know exactly when, 90 or 52, 3, something like that. And we were good friends. And he liked baseball, and we went to a few exhibition games here. I remember that he had a charming little wife that he liked very much. I remember that very closely.
I remember before he got her, he sure did like it. Thought he was going to kill me and get in trouble.
And so out of that developed a friendship. friendship, and then he and Sampley both were transferred to Korea, and he may want to tell you about that. But we exchanged Christmas cards for a lot of years, and like some other people along the way, we got lost in the shuffle with the dresses and so forth. But I guess Fielder put me in contact with Sampley when I started trying to work on this a little bit, and talked to Fielder, and he gave me, I think this is the way it went, Sampley, and I called Sampley, talked to him, he gave me Buck's address and phone number, and I called Buck, and he basically said, just tell us when to be there. We're going to be there, and he's here, and I'm glad, and he brought Wanda with us. And, I'm glad to call him friend, and here he is.
I came to OCS in '52. Lived in the barracks with a lot of you guys, and Sampley and me roomed together. Billy's the only one that I know of that says he doesn't remember Dee Sampley. But Dee was a character, if you please, a very laid back fellow with a wry sense of humor. We've been through school together and have been friends all our life. And through his influence, I was assigned to the OCS group. And one of me had planned, even before I came up there, and what Eudorus here was alluding to was the fact that one time when he was going home, I rode with him and wanted was meeting me there, and he thinks I drove a little too fast or had an interest to get there real quick.
That Kaiser moved that fast.
You better believe it.
And he thinks I'm understating the facts just a bit. But I would like to tell you that I appreciate each of you that I served with. I would agree with what Matt just said, that it was a good group. I don't know that I added to that plurality, but I appreciate each of you and what you were and what you are. And just to see you here today, it means a lot to me, and I'm glad for it. Sampley and me got to sent to Korea in April of '74.
54.
I don't know where I said before. Yes, in April of '54. I won't tell you the details of that. Some of you may not remember like the way I know that it happened. But it was a shock to us. And we weren't supposed to go to Korea, but through a practical deal, we got to go to the Great Land and the Orient. But as it turned out, we flew out there to San Francisco out of St. Louis and boarded Thomas Jefferson along with about 1,200 other GIs and went into Yokohama Bay and took a train into Tokyo and flew into Korea. And the first stop was Busan, which is on the South Peninsula, and then the next one was at Daegu, K2 site. And when they heard the personnel man over there, and he had worked with officer's record, they took me off, and that was my assignment at K2 in Daegu, Korea. And I served there, and Sampley went on up to K55, which is Osan, and Ken McAlexander later on got to be on that same base, he told me. So we served there, and we came back at the same time, and reunited in Tokyo, and came back on a boat together to San Francisco, and went down to Eglin Field, the new auxiliary field, made up there, and we were assigned to that.
Tell me about the airplane.
Okay. I was telling Jim that Dee and me talked, and in fact, I worked there at base headquarters at K2, and Dee, of all things, got assigned to the motor pool, if you can believe, up at K55. And we would talk to each other on the phone, and I took a hop. Colonel Bates, our wing commander with 5th Air Force, and he knew I had a buddy up there, and I took care of all the officers' records and OERs. And got to know Colonel well, and he'd ask me if I wanted to go up and see my buddy, and I'd go up and see old Sampley once in a while. But I called him when I got this assignment to come back to Eglin, and the first thing he said, "You're going to Eglin Field." He said, "Me too." So we met in Tokyo, and was glad to be returning home. We only stayed about 10 and a half months in Korea. But I was logged on a flight the next day to go into Hawaii and then into San Francisco. Sampley was on the boat. We won't come home together. So went out to personnel processing and tried to get him on the plane. They said, can't do it, it's full. So I said, well, how about me getting off and getting onto the boat because we won't go home together. This gal was doing it, said, well, we can make trees like that all day. So I got off the plane and onto the boat. Called one or roller, I don't know what she did, to let her know what would be a little way to get home. It took 17 days on the Cape Esperance. But the next morning, the headlines there in the paper, we got that plane crash going to Hawaii. It flew into the mountain, and of course it was a boy. Called in and did GCA landing. And I don't know why the pilot didn't maneuver it right, but it took 66 lives. That's C-66. Left there and went there. I was due to be on the water. I knew those guys, and even though you're glad you're not there, it's only by the Lord's grace that you're not. But it's still a sadness to know all those guys were there. Anyhow, Sampley and me are on the boat, and we come home together and come back to Illinois for a brief stay, and went down to Purple Field and spent the rest of our months and came back to civilian life. I went back into retailing, which I was into before I went into service, and got my GI benefits and took more training in that. And we had a group of department stores out of St. Louis, and I was fortunate enough that I only managed a store about 7 years, and then I was a district supervisor and supervised the store. And I did a lot of traveling, and we have two wonderful daughters, and one did a very fine job of raising them. And we traveled a bit. We moved to Indiana, to Missouri, back to Illinois. But we've always been close in the proximity of where we grew up. And we came to Mount Carmel then in 1970.